coming to you from the Endless Library, where every book is read and every spoiler discussed. Join us as we dig into the lives of fictional people who cannot defend themselves. This is the SideQuest Podcast.
Welcome back to SideQuest, everyone.
Welcome back to Roshar. Thanks for having me. I'll be Szeth Son Villano tonight, tuning in to stab you in the heart.
You can try. I'm going to soul cast you into oblivion.
Yeah? Who are you going to be?
Obviously, I'm a Lightweaver. If I'm going to follow a character, I might as well stick with the...
That's right. There we go.
My one and only.
That's right. Yasna, who's dead?
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
She can join us from the reaches of beyond.
From beyond. Did we have a discussion with Spencer when you were present about the God Beyond?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember. We had like 4 conversations at least.
Yeah, 4. There's like a repetitive pattern. It happens more in Mistborn than anywhere else, but in mentions it. Actually, Future Slava, you should cut that out. Don't want people to feel like I spoiled book for them of still being around. Yeah, there's a piece that happens, or like a phrase that happens. It happens more in Mistborn than anywhere else, but there's a mention of the God Beyond.
Doesn't say that in... I'm sorry.
So anyway, ignoring you for a second. Yeah, the God Beyond is a thing in the Cosmere, but it's not Adonalsium, which, I bet next episode we'll end up talking about Adonalsium a little bit because of Spencer and I bet the boys who join us, JT and Casey, I think they're still fresh to the Cosmere, so I bet that they're not familiar with Adonalsium. But the God Beyond is a different god than Adonalsium. I don't know why I started mentioning that. Because you said something about the Beyond. That's why. Anyhow, whatever. Chapter 83. Let's dive in here.
All right.
Time's illusion.
That it is. We start off with Shallan and Renarin, along with some soldiers and bridgemen who enter a deserted circular plateau after skirting along the battle lines. She explains that this must be where the Oath Gate is because it seems to be the center from which the Shattered Plains were broken. Pattern says the Voidspren are raising a storm, and Renarin says the winds are blowing the wrong way, from west to east, and that is an Everstorm. Shallan then tells them to search the area for anything out of the ordinary. They find a large rock mound, and Renarin cuts a hole into it at Shallan's request. Adolin and his soldiers entered a chamber in the rock formation behind the Preshendi lines, after Adolin cut a hole in the rock using his shardblade. Adolin tells his force that he will cut a hole in the wall behind their foes, and that they are to attack the singing Preshendi who are on the other side of the wall. Adolin's group is able to ambush the singers, who are disoriented briefly when they stop singing, to fight back. Adolin is distinguished by the ease with which he kills his foes, instead of feeling the thrill as usual. He dismisses his shardblade, but is then attacked by Eshonai, and then happily resummons his blade in order to face the worthy foe. Meanwhile, Dalinar retreats from battle to get a spear wound treated by physicians. The survivors of Rioan's army follow him. Navani shows up, and Dalinar tells her they are losing the battle, though Navani says that Adolin won his plateau. Rioan yells in panic that they are losing, and Dalinar hears a voice that says it should not end this way. Dalinar asks who the voice is and realizes it's none other than Stormfather, who calls Dalinar a child of honor. The Stormfather says he is both Spren and God, and that the Preshendi are summoning an opposing deadly storm, and that all he can do is bring a storm of cleansing to wash away their bodies. Dalinar is angered and denounces the Stormfather for abandoning them. The Stormfather says he has to go since his daughter is disobeying, and that Dalinar will see no more visions, and Dalinar pleads for the Stormfather not to leave. While all this is happening, Kaladin stands before Elhokar's unconscious body as Moesh approaches. Graves yells at Moesh, who in turn replies that Kaladin is indeed trustworthy. Cal recognizes that they are in the same hallway as where Szeth previously attacked. Moash tries to get Cal to stand down, saying the king is probably already dead. But Cal refuses and says that Moash is betraying Bridge 4, and that Cal is trying to repent by doing the right thing now. Moash and Kaladin argue, and Kaladin tries to get Moash to pursue justice against Roshon, who was responsible for the death of Moash's grandparents, and that Moash's method is not honorable. Kaladin refuses to back down, and Moash readies to fight.
Woof.
I know.
And this is where we get the F Moash subreddit.
Only here? Only this part?
Yeah, well, this is the start of it. It only gets worse, sad to say. But
He's
honestly,
enveloped by his hate?
yes. Yes. Sounds like somebody read ahead.
Oh, just a good guess on my part. I didn't read that far ahead.
Fair enough. But yeah, this is just the start. It only gets worse, sadly, because as we've kind of spoken about briefly in other episodes, the betrayal of a friend is never a great time, especially when they continue coming back. Woof.
It's often worse when there's no resolution. And by resolution, I don't mean a nice Hallmark movie ending where things get resolved in the clear sense of that, but resolution in the sense where an inner resolution where you're like, oh, this happened and this happened, without excusing the action. You can say definitively, or as definitively as one can, here are the steps that led to this betrayal. Once you get the why, cops try to get the why from the suspect when they're interrogating him, or they know that this suspect is the culprit. They always want to get the why. So I think sometimes when you get the why, it eases some of the pain. But when there's no reason for it and a betrayal destroys the relationship, that I think is so much harder to cope with.
100%. And the worst part is that Sanderson really shows us that the characters that are the bad guys always are thinking that they're doing the correct thing. And I bet in our recap we'll probably address this a little bit, or maybe it'll be more in detail, I don't know. Because we see that not only with Moash, who thinks that he's doing the right thing getting back at the Light Eyes for not taking care of what shouldn't have happened to him, so he wants revenge, but we also see something like this in Taravangian a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Or a lot of it, depending on how you look at it. But we won't pause on that at the moment because there's still a climax to be had, and we're just getting started. So, man, Kaladin, beaten and bruised and bloodied, has to defend the king without Syl because he has made poor choices in how he has made oaths. So, what is going to happen indeed?
Well, you can enlighten us by giving us a summary of Chapter 84. Might be a little bit about it there.
Just a little bit? Just a little bit? Just a little bit. Okay.
The One Who Saves, Chapter 84.
Shallan and Renarin enter a large circular room covered with majestic images on the wall and floor. She believes that that this is where the portal is. There are 10 equal divisions in the floor mural and an 11th narrower one representing Urithiru. Renarin says it is coming. Pattern says the Everstorm has been summoned and that there is another high storm, and the two will collide nearby. We got some great rising tension right now.
Oh, yeah.
For this crew out on the Shattered Plains, causing a very devastating storm. Shallan tells Renarin to insert his Shardblade into a keyhole to try and activate the gate, but nothing happens. Shallan tells the Bridgemen to get their armies onto this plateau so that they can escape, while the scholars try to figure out how to work the Oath Gate. Adolin and Eshonai duel amidst the storm and battle. Eshonai thinks she is winning, but she gets reckless, and Adolin is able to knock her into a chasm by slamming her in the chest and knocking her backwards. Adolin almost falls, but is grabbed by Scar and Drehi, and the other soldiers who pull Adolin back away from the chasm ledge. Adolin returns to the central plateau to get an update and stops someone who looks like a cloaked messenger, but it turns out to be Szeth. Adolin, I hope you've been practicing. Kaladin tries to attack with his spear, but Moash breaks it and then hits him hard with a shard-aided punch. and Kaladin crumbles in pain with broken ribs. Moash and Graves try to set up the scene to implicate Szeth as Elokar's assassin. Kaladin hears a distant argument between Sylphrena and the Stormfather. Moash and Graves argue over which one of them will kill Elokar. Kaladin thinks that he will protect even those he hates so long as it is right. His next oath, and explains it to himself why he must do so since that is what is right. Kaladin struggles to stand up and draws his knife and places himself between the assassins and Elokar. Kaladin stands in defiance and hears Syl claim him and stamp down the Stormfather's argument. Graves says that Kaladin must die, and Kaladin drops his knife. Kaladin speaks his third oath as instructed by Sylphrena, and the Stormfather accepts the words. Syl appears and tells Kaladin to hold his hand out, and she becomes a shardblade in his hand. Kaladin breathes in deep and drains the stormlight from all the nearby spheres, exploding with light and blinding Moash as he heals himself. Wind blows in through burst shutters, and a glyph resembling wings forms in frost on the ground. Kaladin says the Knights Radiant have returned, and Graves yells out that the diagram spoke of this, but that they didn't realize what it referred to until it was too late, saying that they were trying to separate Kal from Dalinar, but not realizing the implications. Moash and Graves flee. Kaladin puzzles over Graves' words, realizing that Dalinar is in danger, and Syl tells him something is very, very wrong. You know what I love about these Sanderlanches?
What's that?
They're basically like movies, because in a single chapter, he'll cut between 3 different points of view
Mm-hmm.
to give us this very action-oriented scene play-by-play for us to just revel in.
It's packed, dude. I love it. This was my favorite chapter. Like this event right here, I was blown away by how high octane it was.
High octane is a great way to describe it. And we learned some things here about Kaladin, about Stormlight, about the Knights Radiant, because, and you're coming from, the point of view of like first read through still,
Yeah.
right? And we didn't know where Shardblades come from. And now we know that Shardblades come from the Spren that make a pact with the Squires, because Kaladin is only now a Knights Radiant, but he wasn't before. So it takes about 3 oaths to get into it from our understanding at this moment, because his first oath is journey before destination, strength before weakness, and do you know the third one?
Death before honor.
Life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. I said it wrong. So
Okay.
set you up to try to correct me, but we'll have to give you a couple more read-throughs before that happens, I guess.
I guess so, yeah.
But we had a question answered where it's like, okay, where do Shardblades come from? But this leaves us with another question of like, okay, well, if Syl became a Shardblade and shortly hereafter she'll become a spear, what are all the Shardblades that other people are walking around with? Are those Spren, or are they something else entirely? And then the Honor Blades, are those also Spren? More questions. Same with the Shardplate. Where does that come from? So a lot more questions to be had here. But this is just such a great scene. The juxtaposition of like being in failure mode and then like still choosing to do what is right, even though he doesn't want to protect Elokar. And then because of that repentance, seeing some redemptive action come from it. And in that redemptive action, because it's a fantasy book, power is associated with that, which is just a really, really, you said it better than I could say it. It's high octane moment, very fun, maybe best chapter in the book. We'll see. Maybe next episode we can ask the guys what their favorite scenes were.
I also like the debate, the argument between Syl and the Stormfather.
Oh yeah? Tell us more.
The way she pleads for Kaladin, her watching him since he was a child, essentially, and then her being with him through his worst points in his life, and then seeing him grow and seeing, I guess, what we could safely assume his potential as a Knight Radiant, makes her plead with the Stormfather, and ultimately she wins over. I thought the juxtaposition of that, to use your word, in between what's happening with Kaladin, you get Sylphrena's viewpoint, They just made for a great scene, I think.
Oh, super good scene. Especially because we get that behind the scenes curtain view or behind the curtains view of like Syl isn't just waiting around. And this is another reason why Sanderson's writing has been like growing in popularity is he shows us the snippets of time where you go, where has Syl been the last, 15 chapters? Because she hasn't been around. And then it's like, oh, she's been doing something because he shows us her in action trying to get back to Kaladin, basically.
Yeah.
Which then you go, oh, okay, so like stuff has been going on, but I'm not necessarily aware of it from, what the author reveals.
Right. And he writes a lot of his books that way, if not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm basing that on what you've said previously as well, where there's things that are happening in other books in this timeline that either illuminate to the reader why what we're reading currently is important or gives us a peek behind the curtain, or is just part of the general unfolding of the overarching narrative. And I think even as a newbie to this world, having read not even a quarter of the books, or maybe around a quarter, actually exactly a quarter, I don't know what I'm talking about.
There you go.
Having read only a quarter of the books, I still see that
Yeah.
talent that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we've brushed on this, I guess I should say. Not even briefly. We've brushed on this. You have stepped away to read Mistborn. You finished the first book. And one of the moments that we've chatted about is like, this isn't as well developed, per se, as like The Way of Kings. And I was like, well, yeah, because Mistborn came out before The Way of Kings. Like all three of the first era books. And so that reflects on, where's the author's maturity level? What have they figured out in writing? What have they not figured out? The difficult part for people who come in, afterward, where they started like Warbreaker or whatever, because Warbreaker was after Mistborn as well, is you get the taste of him maturing as an author, but then when you go back and read it, depending on the way that you like stories told to you, which I think we've mostly discussed off air, maybe next episode you can share a little bit more on how you like to take in stories. Because I feel like we have some momentum here. But the way that you like to read a story, and we've talked about this in other books, but we'll have, we can mindfully regurgitate it for new listeners, is different from how I like to read books. On top of like how Sanderson likes to write his stories, because he's writing this epic that takes place across different planets, different characters, a universe stage timeline, and a universe stage conflict that's going on, not just on Roshar, not just on Sel, not just on Threnody, not just on Nalthis, but all of them together. And then until book 7 of Mistborn, he has kept a very slow drip, very slow draw, very slow moments of giving us a view of what's going on in the Cosmere at the level of the spiritual plane. So he like rips the curtain down in book 7 of Mistborn, which was like 2 years ago or a year ago or something like that. And then even more so in book 5, he gives us more into what is going on in the Cosmere as a whole. And so like that's like a line in the sand that happened over the last 2 years where Sanderson's like, all right, I'm tearing the cloak down and I'm going to show you more of what's been going on. Just builds even more momentum because now all the people who've been studying the books, and I say that not even lightly, but people study this stuff. And so you've heard me say before, and then I'll shut up for a minute, is I'm not a well scholared person in the Cosmere compared to the majority of the readers. They know way more than I do, which I'm okay with. I this is fun for me. Sometimes I forget things, but like some of these people know everything. And I look to them to answer my questions.
Well, one of them or 10 of them should drop some stuff in the notes or the comments. They can't access their notes. We welcome your correction, interpretation, theories, conjectures, all that good stuff
Yes,
in
theories.
the comments.
Yes.
But moving forward, we are in chapter 85, Swallowed by the Sky. Pete reports to Dalinar and Avani that Shallan said there were 2 storms converging on their location. Kale reports that Aladar won his plateau and they were defeating the Preshendi. They plan to relocate to where Shallan is to try to flee to safety. Adolin suddenly flies into the tent, battered and missing parts of his sharp blade. Szeth arrives nearby as Dalinar looks up. Shallan tries to figure out the puzzle of opening the Oath Gate. Renarin speaks cryptically about seeing the future and that the end has come. Fearing the end as Szeth approaches, Dalinar speaks to Adolin about being a good leader when Adolin ultimately takes over the princedom. Dalinar tells Aladin that he was taught well and is a good man, and that Adolin isn't a tyrant like Dalinar originally was, and tells him to unite the High Princes. Dalinar tells Bridge 4 to back off, and asks Szeth why he killed Gavilar. Szeth replies that he obeys his masters without explanation, and that he will get what he is owed. Szeth attacks and is paired by Dalinar, causing Szeth to smile wickedly. Adolin struggles to his feet, watching Dalinar as Szeth battle, and seeing another storm forming. He tells Scar and Drehi to help him remove his battered and non-functioning shardplate. Dalinar thinks of his brother as he fights Szeth. Eventually, Szeth gets a Stormlight-aided punch through and breaks Dalinar's ribs, taking him out of the fight. Dalinar comes to the realization that he would not have been able to save his brother's life against Szeth, bringing peace to his soul. Szeth approaches to finish the fight, but is attacked by Royan. Adolin watches as Szeth slices up Royan's sword and lashes him to the sky, causing him to fly up. Szeth then slays a dozen soldiers easily. Adolin attacks, but is easily parried. Royan soon comes crashing down to the earth and is instantly killed from the impact. Adolin is joined by some bridgemen and soldiers, but Szeth manages to knock him back with a forceful swing of his shardblade. Szeth reaches Dalinar and touches him, causing him to fly up into the sky, then walks away. Adolin follows, but stops as Szeth says he is done. Adolin moves to strike at Szeth, but the parrying blow breaks his wrist, and Szeth moves in for the kill as Adolin loses his blade. He looks up in surprise to see Dalinar floating back down slowly. Szeth looks up in horror to see Kaladin crash into the ground holding a shardblade, leaving a sword-like glyph where he landed. Kaladin says that he claims the sky and the winds and Szeth's life.
Oh, walk us through, like, what your first retreat. Walk us through that. Just like these last two chapters, high octane. Just give it to us, Slava. Just what's going on? What are you thinking? You know, your wife calls you for dinner, and you go, "Oh, I can't put the book down right now."
Shut up, woman. Let me read.
Cover
No.
your safe hand.
Yeah, I thought chapter 84 was high octane, and I was like, all right, there's probably a lull in this Sanderlanche, maybe, and then not so much, and then not so freaking much at all.
Nope.
Continuation of 84, man. It was, again, high octane. I knew, or at least I was confident, that
That's a good way
Dalinar
to say it.
wasn't going to die, because we saw in the previous chapter, which we really didn't cover in the overview here, but we saw that Kaladin realizes something is wrong based on what Graves said, and so he dashes.
Mm-hmm.
He flies, pun intended, towards where Dalinar is to save him. And I was on the edge of my seat. This was another well-written action scene.
This is like this type of Sanderlanche is kind of what we Cosmerians live for, right? I think it's also this moment where there's so much realization going on, and there's such a stark difference between, like, okay, we thought Kaladin would lost all of his powers in your first read through, but then he gets them back because he did the right thing. I think it's that really stark contrast, which is why people say that this is the best book of the 5. It doesn't mean Kaladin doesn't go through more hardships. It doesn't mean that other bad things don't happen. It doesn't mean that other characters don't die, which are really, really sad and heartbreaking. But it's that moment of, like, Kaladin messed up and chose the wrong thing. And so for like 15 chapters, he's got no Stormlight. he's done. That's it. And then when he comes back in this heroic, action-packed set of chapters, it's just such a great payoff, you know?
It is. For the readers, it's a great payoff. For him, it's a great redemption
Yes.
arc. Well done, Sanderson. Well done.
You think Cal just left the king there?
I don't remember, actually. It's been a while.
It's funny what he did. But, yeah, he just takes off, leaves the king there. He puts, yes, the king into trusted hands in his drunken stupor. But
2 hands or 1 hand? I forget.
1 hand.
Yeah, there it is. Now, I sort of kind of remember, I guess.
Yeah. So, Dalinar is about to hit the ground, but it says that he's got peace of being like, I couldn't have defended my brother if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Because he goes blow to blow with Szeth for like a couple hits and then realizes this guy's crazy. He's so good. He's better than me.
And I'm Blackthorn, and he's better than me.
Right. He's just like, okay, I could not have defended my brother.
So he gets some peace.
Yeah. He gets a little release.
In what he thinks is his last moments.
Right. Oh, man. Big D. Big Dalinar. Any other final thoughts here? What do you think about the moment that Dalinar is having with Adolin?
Well, he's saying goodbye.
Yeah. Was that touching for you, or you just were like,
yeah. I mean, I was engrossed in the other stuff, but I paused to try to reflect on that moment too as I was reading it, and it was a powerful, touching moment between father and son.
Yeah.
And Dalinar remembers what he had to do to get the power that he has, the political power that he has. He tells Adolin to go about it differently.
Yeah. It's nice that he got to have that moment because not all the characters are going to get the ability to have those chats.
With Dalinar?
Well, not Dalinar specifically, but you know what I mean. Like with anyone that they love, that they would prefer to say their final piece to, because sometimes that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Like Yasna didn't get to say anything to Shallan. She's dead.
For now. And
don't look at me that way.
That's going to be this is going to be a bit that won't die. Sorry, audience. But I'm guessing, and you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, which you probably won't anyway, is Kaladin won't get to say goodbye to his father. They leave on a sour note in Oathbringer, and Kaladin goes and joins the Prescendi for a while. And that's as far as I got. The Prescendi is starting to trust Kaladin, kind of. One of them is. So my assumption, one of those Slava assumes, is that Cal might not get to say proper goodbye to his father.
Here's what I'll say. I'm assuming that whatever you're going to do in the editing is you're going to bleep me here so that people think that I just gave you a bunch of spoilers for your own entertainment. And then secondly, I'm going to say this. In all of your reading of the Cosmere, there are 0 moments that I can remember that are a duplicate moment of other books.
That's not a duplicate, because if we're thinking right now that Dalinar is dying, he gets his moment with his son.
Yep.
The complete opposite of that is Kaladin's father absolutely dying, and Kaladin not being there to do anything about it, or say goodbye even. It could be a peaceful death in his bed.
Sure. Sure. But here's the thing. I'm going to say it again. Sanderson doesn't reuse major plot devices, from what I can tell. So do with that whatever you will. But off the top of my head, I can't think of a moment that's like, oh, hey, this thing from this series, he does again over here.
So my assumption would fall, in your eyes at least, would fall under that heading, right? That would be a repeat. That
seems like a fair understanding.
Well, I'll stop looking for patterns of light or darkness and let you go over a chapter that's named after that. 86.
Well,
Patterns
just
of
look
light.
look for the etchings of the days counting down on the walls, and then come back to me.
I do that every day.
He does, audience. He does. Hey, it's dangerous to go alone, so don't. You should always side quest with friends. Hit that subscribe button and join the party. Kaladin watches as Szeth reacts in horror to his arrival and Dalinar's safe landing. Cal tells Dalinar to seek shelter as he flew over the storm while traveling. Kaladin says he will deal with Szeth and says yes when Dalinar asks if Cal is what Dalinar has been looking for.
Such a good, dude. Dude, such a good moment there, too.
But he couldn't say it before.
No.
Right? Like,
well, that's why it's so good. It's earned.
That's right. That's right. Because Dalinar asked him before, and he's like, what did he say? I was, but not anymore. Something like that.
Yep. I was, but not anymore.
Yeah.
Paraphrasing, but yes, essentially that.
Teft and Bridge 4 members throw down lanterns with infused gems for Kaladin to drain for investiture. So, like, his guys know what's up. So much fun.
They've known for a bit, but
yeah. And it's really, it was heartwarming when he falls into the chasm earlier in the book, and Dalinar's like, "Hey, you guys should probably go mourn and whatever," and they're like, they just burst out laughing because they're like, "You don't understand," and that's okay. You don't have to understand. They don't see Kaladin as a messiah necessarily, but like basically an unkillable soldier.
That's their leader.
Right.
I wouldn't even attribute anything tangential to Messiah worship in his men towards him.
Yeah, not at all.
But they have a high view of him. They understand who he is meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the way he's treated them, protected them, all the things to them, they have, call it faith, call it confidence, which confidence is by faith, confide, call it all those things. It's them placing their faith in a man that's proven to them to be trustworthy and to have abilities beyond the human realm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they 80 feet. Cal will be back. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Silly old Dalinar.
And Dalinar's like, okay, as long as you guys are, still being good, taking some breaks and getting your chores done or whatever he said, your shifts.
Yeah, this is all part of the 12-step
Yep.
process of grief.
Yep.
Or wherever the hell it is. You guys are in denial now. We'll be good.
And then Dalinar, shocked when Kaladin returns and says, are you what I've been looking for?
Do you think he's a little less shocked than Szeth is to see Kaladin?
Dalinar?
That's a silly joke.
That's a great question. But I think the question's valid. I think maybe a little less shocked, but I'd say not by much. Szeth has to confront like truths that he believed, which happen to be lies. Dalinar saw Kaladin broken and bruised. Dalinar never saw Kaladin heal himself.
Right. Fair point.
Other people saw Kaladin heal himself unbeknownst to them, like when Kaladin was sparring with Adolin on the battlefield in front of Zyle and should have like been pretty damaged, but he isn't. So yeah, I think Dalinar is probably just as shocked as Szeth, but maybe just a little less because he's got the incident where it's like he fell to the chasms, he shouldn't be shocked. Or sorry, he fell to the chasms and then Kaladin came back. For everyone around who isn't a Radiant, they're starting to see like, oh, there are people with powers now. Like Dalinar knows that Shallan has powers. And so he's like, okay, well, there's at least one. And then to your point, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but Yasna's not dead. And she comes back because she was.
Well, now you ruined the bit.
Yeah,
she. For 9 episodes, we've been going, she's dead. No, she's not.
Yeah, well, I assume by now that they've finished the book if they're listening to this.
Hopefully.
So, but the first time you read it, you don't like, and this gets into it. You don't want someone to tell you like, oh yeah, Yasna's not dead, because the emotional journey you go on thinking like, okay, Shallan's mentor, that's it, she's dead.
Yeah. Here's the thing. And we've been over and over this before, but for the sake of the new listeners, the old listeners can skip ahead 15 seconds. I don't want to know that Yasna's alive then in the book. So when I text you, I expect you to do your due diligence, which you do phenomenally, and keep those plot points away from me. But if I ask you, hey, explain Taravangian's compulsion with the death rattles, I don't want you to hide that from me. And if you said, oh, he goes insane later on and makes up a whole document that guides his further insanity, that won't ruin it for me. Like, so we're talking, I mean, and it's all subjective too. Like, what is that?
It's a fine line, right? Like, there's it's not an easy line to, and we talked about this off air. It's not an easy line to be like, okay, well, this stuff I want to know about, but don't tell me about this stuff. It's like,
exactly. So I try to ask you questions that, in my estimation, won't be the level of spoiler that you telling me Yasna's actually alive, because I would probably sent my Spren after you, because I had a few Spren after her death. So anyway, all that aside, let's get back to Teft and Bridge 4. What are they doing with Kaladin here?
Yeah. They throw down their lanterns, infuse gemstones for Kaladin to drain for investiture. Kaladin attacks Szeth, angered and ready to avenge the fallen bridgeman. Shallan asks to have Renarin quieted while she tries to figure out the pattern to opening the Oath Gate and realizes that the lock is a fabrial. Just a quick pause here. For the book being Shallan's point of view, like 80% of it, in this Sanderlanche, she gets like just very few snippets, which is interesting. It's not a bad choice. I think it's good, but it's just...
Well, she got 80% of the book, like you said, or roughly.
Yeah. Yep. And can we just... I'll get back to the chapter in a second. The fact that an author chose to do like, okay, he gives us 80% of Kaladin in book 1, but like 20% of Kaladin in book 2, or whatever it is, right? And it's like, but we feel like we already know him, so like he doesn't need all the same attention that we get for Shallan, but he's also woven in a third character every time that gets, like a 7% or 10% ratio, so that then he'll use them later. And so you're actually getting to see all the characters and feel like you know them. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
It is.
It's brilliant.
It's good writing. It's good writing. And I know we sound like fanboys to those on the fence or some of our detractors, because I found people who actively dislike Stormlight Archives and do not like Sanderson's writing. And that's fine. I'm not even throwing shade at them. All of this is subjective in some sense. Not all of it. Most of it is subjective in some sense. You can objectively say something is good and bad based on standards. But all that aside, again, Sanderson knows how to weave a story. Outside of what we said about, or what you said about the Cosmere and the universe level narrative, by itself, if I just read Oathbringer by itself, and let's say it wasn't part of a trilogy or, well, it wasn't part of a series, and it was just a extra couple 100 pages in it, giving us the background we need to understand who Cal and Syl and Shallan are, it'd still be a good book.
Yes.
By standards of what it means to tell a story well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Anyway, that's all I got.
Spencer and I actually have a friend. He doesn't live in the state anymore, but he actively makes fun of us. He's like, "Oh, Brandon Sanderson." Beep, boop, 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 boop. But he likes fantasy books, but he just doesn't like Sanderson. And we're both like, you didn't even give it a chance, right? Like, it's just funny. It's a funny bit that he likes to do. But anyway.
Yeah. Well,
go for it.
I was going to say, poor Spence. He has these books and characters that he likes, and I can tell that he likes. And every time that I crap on one, or JT or Casey goes, "This character's a piece of poo-poo caca head," you can just tell Spencer's like this deep breath, Spence, deep breath.
I have to put up with these insolent fools.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do I keep coming back to this?
Right.
Oh man, maybe he'll have some great insights next session here when he comes back. But anyway, I'll finish the chapter here. Sorry, folks. Dalinar asks for a status report on the retreat as he watches Kaladin fight Szeth. He helps Adolin to his feet and confirms that Kaladin is a Radiant, making Adolin smile in realization. I'll just keep my thoughts to myself. It's fine. Adolin heads toward where Shallan is, along with some bridgemen. Dalinar finds his horse, then goes toward Shallan's plateau, finding Royan's army heading that way. Dalinar encounters Sabariel, who is in repose with Pelona, and says that he helped organize the retreat, and gives an update on the armies. Aladar reports on his victory and proclaims that the vengeance pact fulfilled due to the overwhelming number of Parshendi slain. As the soldiers gather on one plateau, Dalinar explains that victory feels like exhaustion and pain and suffering, and that they will need to fit everyone close together on the plateau to be ready to get through the portal. Kaladin flies through the air chasing Szeth as Syl flies around him, saying that she was only as dead as his oaths, which is an interesting thing that people should remember. Kaladin asks about the out-of-season high storm, and Syl says the Stormfather caused it to try to end it all and wash away and hide from the future. Kaladin flies through enough to break the storm ceiling into sunlight and finds Szeth. Szeth claims that Kaladin stole an honor blade, but he denies this. Szeth attacks and Syl changes into a spear so that Kaladin can more easily parry. Szeth observes this but clings to his denial of Kaladin being a Radiant. Shallan infuses spheres in the chamber with Stormlight, not bothering to conceal her abilities. She runs out of Stormlight and cries for more gemstones. She sees Adolin leading the soldiers and goes to him briefly. Adolin sees her glowing and says, "You too?" And she replies, "Yes, sorry," then yells for them to hurry. And the thing is, like, this is just a summary, but, like, it's still funny. Like, Sanderson's he's just a great writer. Anyway, Kaladin and Szeth battle, using lashings to maneuver back and forth as the two storms clash into each other below. Szeth says that knights can't be back, but Kal retorts that they are and will kill him. Szeth manages to stab Kaladin, but he is able to heal his wound, though it consumes a lot of Stormlight. Szeth boasts that he will win due to his experience, but Kal says that the sky is and always was his. Kal starts fighting instinctually and manages to strike Szeth as Syl changes weapon forms. First from sword to spear, to hammer to spear. While they fight, though Szeth dodges a killing blow, Kaladin sees the top of the plateau crest through the clouds, spinning slowly. Szeth lands on the surface, chased by Kaladin. Szeth again yells that the Voidbringers can't be back, and heads back toward where Dalinar is in order to complete his assigned assassination. This is high octane. Shallan gets the last spheres lit as time is running out and the floor begins to glow. Shallan tells Adolin to put his shard blade into the keyhole, but nothing happens. She realizes what the problem is and summons Pattern in blade form and puts him into the keyhole, causing a reaction as she senses something unlock deep inside the plateau. Shallan and Adolin push against Pattern in the form of an inserted blade lever along a ridge in a circular wall where the picture of Urithiru is, and she pulls Pattern back out. The lamps then fade out. Kal follows Szeth into the storm as Syl admonishes caution because the Stormfather hates him, and this is his domain, and that another worse storm brews as well. Kaladin and Szeth both reinvest their Stormlight from the storm. Szeth reaches the plateau before Kaladin, but it is mysteriously empty. Adolin cuts a hole in the stone, revealing sunlight. They look outside, find the gathered armies on the plateau, but it has relocated them to the mountain range that also houses Urithiru. Szeth screams at Kaladin as red spren zip around in a tempest. Szeth realizes that Dalinar and his armies went to Urithiru and flies off toward the west. Chased by Kal, Kaladin chases with difficulty, and they both reach the storm front and break through it, and Kaladin stabs Szeth in his foot. Kaladin managed to smash Szeth in his shoulder as they fight just ahead of the high storm. As they fight, Szeth finally acknowledges the truth and says that he was right all along and was never truthless, and that he could have stopped murdering at any time. Szeth stops fighting, and Kaladin is about to make a killing strike, but instead slices his wrist, sending the honor blade tumbling. Syl urges Kaladin to grab the sword, and Kaladin dives after it, as Szeth falls to the ground, no longer lashed, and pummeled by the storm. Kaladin stays hovering, surrounded by windspren. Syl says she may keep Kaladin around. Syl demands compliments and a smile. That's chapter 86. So, one note about this is one of the very few things that Sanderson retconned with the first publishing of Words of Radiance. I believe that this summary here is the first presentation of the book where it says that Kaladin hits his wrist and then he just falls to his death. I believe that the follow-up, and I'll have to try to remember to ask Spencer about this in the next episode, but hopefully I'll remember, because this is like a retconned thing that happened, and I don't remember exactly why, but I just know that this is the spot where Kaladin and Szeth are fighting, and Sanderson had to retcon something about this fight, and I believe it was the killing blow, and I don't even remember why.
I think in the original release of Words of Radiance, Kaladin severed Szeth's spine with his shard blade, killing Szeth.
Yes.
And Brandon changed it, so what you read is actually what happened, I think.
Oh, is it vice versa? You sure?
I'm fairly confident. By the magic of editing,
Blah, 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 blah.
Jonathan found the answer.
No, I'm going to Reddit. So recently I learned the ending of Words of Radiance was changed in a later edition. In the new edition, instead of Kaladin directly killing Szeth, Kaladin just slices Szeth's hand and he drops his blade and falls into the storm. Now I understand that Brandon did this for character reasons, and while I have some objection to that, I can live with the change. My question is, how did cutting Szeth's hand make him fall into the storm? Granted, I haven't read the new scene, so I'm hoping someone will enlighten me, but having his hand cut off and making him drop his blade wouldn't sever his bond to the blade. The blade is bonded to his soul, right? So the only way to sever the bond is death. Making him drop the blade by cutting off his hand wouldn't disable his surge binding and wouldn't make him fall. First response, with some reasonable amount of upvotes, in the new edition, Szeth basically quits fighting and decides to let Kaladin kill him, which is what makes Kaladin hesitate. Somewhere in that, he releases the bond himself. Still, he has released the bond. He's nothing without the sword. It must not be lost. And later, Szeth, why am I not dead? He whispered. I released my bond to the shard blade. I fell into the storm without lashings. Why didn't I die? So I was right that this is the spot that was retconned.
But what you read is what happened in the book.
Not in my book.
Well, in my book.
Yeah, in my book, he stabs him through the spine.
Okay, in my book, he doesn't.
Fair enough. Anyway, there's a retcon there from Sanderson. There's mixed reviews on it, as you can see. I don't think that the retcon did as much. So, let me put it this way. Had it been written this way from the beginning, made sense. Szeth has to admit that he should have not been killing all along, breaks the bond himself, chooses to die. Yep, cool, got it. Kaladin being able to kill him is more heroic, but even in the version that I have, Szeth let him kill him because he was just like, I'm done. Just kill me. I don't deserve to live. I've done evil things.
Yep.
So I think they both work, and I don't feel like the retcon is as powerful because it was retconned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
By retconning, you lower the impact towards the canon. Anyway, I don't need to live on this point for too long, but just to note for the audience that there is a retcon in the Cosmere, and it's this. I think this might be the only one. I can't remember though.
I agree. Giving Kaladin a chance to kill Szeth, a well-deserved death, by the way. Giving Kaladin a chance to kill Szeth is more powerful than, oh, he just gives up and falls and the storm takes him. I also don't care that much because I read the latter. And fine.
Yep. Anyway, just a note for the folks. Any more notes here, Slava, before 87?
No, let's get into 87. The riddance. Good riddance with Szeth, and on to the riddance of chapter 87. Syl says that the other storm is blowing from west to east of him, not us. But she doesn't know what will happen. Kaladin wonders where the army vanished as he stands in an empty plateau where the army had been just moments before. Syl verifies that Sharblades are dead spren, but they gain a little life when they are summoned, and that forces, unlike people, can be broken without being completely destroyed. Kaladin asks why Szeth's blade doesn't scream, and Syl says it is not a spren, but something different and dangerous. It doesn't scream, but it talks, Cal. It talks. She says she thinks it's an honor blade of the heralds, and that it grants the holder the powers of a windrunner, and that honor blades were given by honor to men, and that spren are based on those blades, and that it is valuable. She explains that the blade gives the abilities without the checks a spren requires, but that it requires dangerous amount of stormlight. Kaladin encounters some men from Bridge 4, including Rock and Teft. Kaladin says the new blade was Szeth's, and now he is dead. Bissig says the Radiant Girl showed them how to bring the plateau back, and Kaladin realizes that it must be Shallan, and that she's either a Radiant or has an honor blade. Kaladin gets a status report and wonders what he should say about Moash, since he realizes he can't keep his abilities a secret. Teft says some of the bridgemen began to glow, and that the bridgemen might be part of the Radiance hierarchy as well. Teft tells Kaladin that his eyes turned light, and Kaladin silently curses. Cal summons Syl to operate the lock fabrial to transport them. Shallan stands by the gates of Urithiru, watching as people begin exploring the city. Patton says that Shallan is almost a radiant and will be once she speaks truths. Shallan guesses that their location is in the mountain near Tubaila, perhaps a mule. Shallan checks in with Dalinar as scribes send messages via Spenreed warning of the storm blowing in the wrong direction. Dalinar reports that Elhokar vanished and that Kholinar is in riot. Shallan sees a flash that marks the return of Kaladin and Bridge 4. Kaladin floats over, carrying a shardblade, and reports that Szeth is dead and that Elhokar was wounded but relocated to a safe house that no one would think of. Lopen experiments with an infused gemstone as his mother implores Elhokar to eat his chowda. Chelinko tells Lopen they may need to move from their house in Sabriel's war camp as there is word that something was found on the plains. Lopen manages to drain some stormlight briefly and sees his flesh growing where his arm is missing. And then he demands more spheres from his family, proclaiming in triumph. He's got his hand back, Ma.
Not yet, but almost.
Moash rides on the cart heading out of the war camps with his armor packed away. Graves joins him and points out some scavengers going to the war camps to loot them. He says they will get what is coming to them when the Everstorm arrives. Moash thinks to himself in disbelief that he was a traitor and that he tried to kill Kaladin and failed to kill Elhokar. Graves explains what he knows from the diagram, though it is vague, and curses that Yasna was right about the Voidbringers being Parshmen. Moash asks who Graves really is, and he replies he is a patriot who interpreted the diagram incorrectly. Graves tells Moash that he will bring him to the diagram and that they have important and mysterious work ahead in saving the world. Moash thinks he was played, but still goes along.
Oh, Moash. And this is a really great contrast, again, where Moash makes an oath that he chooses not to break when confronted by an oath of protecting someone even though he hates him. And so we see the stark contrast between the two men face to face in a battle.
Indeed.
Any thoughts on the back end of this, Sander Lanch, that you just wrapped up?
I like that Lopen was the one who has to take care of Elhokar, who's probably suffering from a hangover. And then his mom's like, eat.
Mm-hmm. What do you, in your culinary mind, what's the closest thing to chowder that we have here in the real world?
Well, what is chowda?
It's that sandwich that they eat that Lopen really likes.
Okay.
You got to look up the ingredients again?
I got to look up the ingredients again.
Okay. Because I see it as like a shawarma sandwich, basically, but mildly different. Because it's like warm bread and meat and stuff all wrapped up into a single, thing.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely like a taco-looking shawarma thing. The bread is definitely thicker than a taco, but it's the size of a medium taco. But it looks like a pita. Almost looks African in origin. And there's like cheese curds next to it, parsley, that pita, and the chowda. So yeah, it's a Middle Eastern African looking thing to me.
Mm-hmm. All right, fair enough. The man who owned the winds.
The man who sold the world.
Eh?
This is a David Bowie chapter.
Give us a quick background on that, because I'm not as familiar with Bowie, personally.
Okay, so he wrote the song, The Man Who Sold the World, which Nirvana covered.
Okay.
Those who know. The Man Who Sold the World.
That's as much as you're going to give us?
No, I can give you a partial lyric.
Ziggy Stardust?
I don't know what that means.
Didn't he call himself Ziggy Stardust?
Who did?
Bowie?
I don't know. But here's some lyrics to assuage your curiosity. We passed upon the stairs. We spoke of was and when, although I wasn't there. He said I was his friend. which came as a surprise. I spoke into his eyes. I thought you died alone, a long, long time ago. Oh no, not me. We never lost control. You're face to face with the man who sold the world.
Yeah, Ziggy Stardust is a fictional character created by English musician David Bowie and was Bowie's stage persona during 1972 to 1973. So, you're quoting Ziggy to me. I'm
Cool.
quoting Ziggy back to you.
Well, I laughed and shook his hand and made my way back home, and then I read a chapter summary for you guys.
The Man Who Owned the Winds.
Yes, The Man Who Owned the Winds, chapter 88.
Well, you made it this far.
Why not go a step further?
Rate the show.
It helps more than you think. Shallan explores the main tower of Erethiru, though she is tired. As she wanders, she finds a folded piece of paper marked with the Ghostblood symbol and her real name, which alarms her. She enters a nearby room where Maraise awaits her and readies to draw Pattern just in case, acknowledging to herself that Pattern is not a typical blade. Maraise says that she gave herself away by using her abilities while saving the army and suggests that Vale is her true identity, not Shallan. Maraise speculates on how people will see Shallan and says that the Ghostbloods take care of their own, including her. She angrily declares that the Ghostbloods killed Yasna, but Maraise calmly replies that Yasna had assassinated some of her members also, and that she should have guessed Shallan's identity sooner due to her family's history. Shallan says she won't help Maraise, but he replies that he has her brothers. He also says that he is owed for the broken soulcaster and that she happens to be one. Shallan threatens to kill Maraise, but he says that her brothers will be safe, and then says that there are answers that she needs to learn about the Ghostblood's purpose and what her brother and father were up to. He says that she can both be a Radiant and a Ghostblood in her different identities, and that she can take time to consider if she wants to join the Ghostbloods. She finds Adolin, and they hug and banter for a bit. Adolin leaves her saying that Pattern chose her quarters for her. She looks at a wall which resembles the room of her father's home, and Pattern says it is time for her to be a Radiant. She sees an illusion of a room with a white carpet and two corpses on the floor, and a painting outlined with a glow of something behind it. Behind the painting, a strong box is hidden, and she opens it and takes out a shard blade that was originally Pattern. Shallan looks at the corpses of her mother and her mother's friend and talks about how her mother tried to kill Shallan when she learned what Shallan could do. Shallan speaks of how her father took the blame for Shallan killing her own mother in self-defense and how it destroyed their family. Shallan says she doesn't want revenge. She wants her family back. Amaram writes a note to Restares, reporting that the Voidbringers were spotted and that a new storm was unleashed, and that the world had to be put in crisis for the heralds and church to return to dominance. He gives the note to Pama to be sent to Restares. As he walks through Dalinar's temple complex, he reflects that the Sons of Honor achieved their goal and that Gavilar would be proud. Amaram stealthily cuts his way into the room where Tain is being held, thinking of regrets for his loss of friendship with Dalinar over Kaladin's accusations of murder. As Amaram leads Talon from the room, Talon catches a poisoned dart in midair that would have hit Amaram, as he sees a masked person shoot another dart at him that is also caught before the would-be assassin runs away. Amaram then leads Talon to his coach. Szeth wakes up wondering why he did not die from the Sharblade wound. Nail is standing there and Szeth recognizes him. Nail explains how he was brought back to life and says he is one of Szeth's gods, though Szeth replies that his gods are stones, and the sun and the stars, not men. Szeth recognizes him as Nalan, Herald of Justice. Szeth asks why he was saved since he can't take his torment anymore, And Nail replies, those words are foolish and unbecoming of his apprentice-to-be. Szeth says he wants to die, but then changes his mind and says that he was right and his people were wrong. Nail says he will teach him to ignore feelings and bring justice to his former leaders. Szeth says he's not worthy, but Nail disagrees, saying that he's stuck to his personal code at great cost and is worthy to be a skybreaker. Nail says that Szeth is reborn and is to begin training immediately, and that he brought a sharp blade for Szeth and throws it on the ground. Szeth picks up the odd-sheeted black sharp blade with a trail of smoke and hears a voice say, "Hello, would you like to destroy some evil today?"
Another great moment. These reveals that Sanderson throws into us at the end are just so enjoyable.
Indeed.
Nightblood has arrived on Roshar, or he's been here all along and we just didn't know it.
He's been here for a while.
But the questions are, why did Vasher give him up?
That is an excellent question. Hey, Jonathan, why did Vasher give up Nightblood?
We don't know.
Oh, well.
And when does Vivenna come to Roshar? Because they were traveling together previously.
Yeah, they were. Does Ciri ever come back in any form or fashion?
We only have one book for Warbreaker. Sanderson has promised a second book called Nightblood. However, with the way that Warbreaker ends, with Vivenna following Vasher around, Vasher says some of his old colleagues have popped up again, Arsteel and Yeasteel. My guess is that Ciri is probably not in that book, but that's just a guess. We don't know. We haven't seen it. It's not out yet. It got shelved back when I first started reading the Cosmere. So Sanderson says that he will fulfill his promise, that it will get written, but he just doesn't know when that is. So,
all right.
Who's to say?
Well, I guess on that sour note, we could move on to Chapter 89, The Four.
Did you expect Szeth to come back to life?
I don't remember exactly what I felt when I read this chapter, but I didn't expect him to come back to life.
Neither did I. Upon my first reread, neither did I. Or read, not reread. But yes, Chapter 89, The Four. Dalinar dreams of his youthful home and a distant source of warmth, then wakes up in Urithiru. He thinks the dream was a vision, but there is no high storm, which generally accompanies his visions. Adolin walks through the city, exploring, wondering at how the tables have turned in his relationship with Shallan. With her newfound importance as a Radiant, Adolin runs into Sadeas, scouting the city, and tries to get Sadeas to admit that Dalinar was right. But Sadeas claims it was all a deal worked out with the Parshendi, as evidenced by R'lain being a bridgeman. Adolin asks why Sadeas wants to knowingly spread lies, and Sadeas says that either him or Dalinar can succeed, but not both. Sadeas says that he has suffered a temporary setback, but will take everything away from Dalinar, and this aggravates Adolin into attacking Sadeas. They grapple, and eventually Adolin stabs Sadeas in the skull, killing him. And he throws away Sadeas' shard blade and covers up his tracks and leaves.
Best moment of deserving stabbings in the face ever.
Well, there's more to come. Maybe not from Adolin, but there are more stabbings to be had in the future from other characters towards other people. So
that are well deserved, though, not just random murder.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. Well deserved. Dalinar reaches the roof of the central tower. He looks down upon the city, seeing the circular rings that comprise the tower and pillars that match, one in the capital of Alethkar, where the palace and temple were built. Dalinar then looks up and questions the actions of the Stormfather that almost led to their destruction. The Stormfather explains his purpose, and that it is like a spren to the Almighty. The Stormfather is a spren to the Almighty. I'll let that sink in for a second. Okay. Dalinar swears the first and second ideals of the Order of Bondsmiths, and the Stormfather reluctantly bonds him, though he insists upon Dalinar getting rid of his shardblade and refuses to be summoned as one. The Stormfather says that he has sent no vision that morning and states that Dalinar's experience was a simple dream, which confuses Dalinar as he felt it was even stronger than a vision. The Stormfather bids Dalinar to go and leads his people against Odium, warning that he is leading them to destruction, as Dalinar is nothing compared to the Almighty. Dalinar retorts that if the Almighty could be killed, then so can Odium. Dalinar leaves the tower and goes to another room near the top where Shallan and Kaladin await. Dalinar takes out a sphere and draws Stormlight into himself in response to Kaladin's inquiry and feels his injuries heal. Dalinar explains that he is a bondsmith, and Shallan says that there are 3 knights, but is corrected by Renarin, who walks in and reveals himself to be a truth watcher. Dalinar explains that the Parshmen are all being changed by the Everstorm, and that they must prepare. Kaladin says that he has to go home to warn his parents, leaves with Dalinar's blessing to pack for the journey. Dalinar sends Renarin to Elhokar, who has arrived with the Herdazians with whom he was hiding, to acquire spheres for Kaladin. He muses that now Renarin is a Radiant, he should stop sending him on menial errands. Dalinar and Shallan, now alone, speak of the tasks facing them to save as many people as possible, reciting the first ideal again. Woo! Things are moving.
Things are moving, but nothing was moving as fast as my heart when I read the epilogue. How's that for a segue? Huh?
Take it away. Take it away.
All right. Epilogue. Art and expectation. Wit talks to himself, naturally, about art and beauty and expectation while he waits for Yasna to transport herself to the cognitive realm. She asks how he found her, and he replies that she made a large disturbance on the other side. Yeah, that's a way of putting it. Yasna threatens and interrogates Wit, but he brushes these off and says he's already aware of the important tidings she brings. Wit says the Everstorm has arrived and Authorial was located and the Knights have been refounded. Wit offers to work with Yasna and pool their knowledge as they walk back to civilization, despite the desolation that is beginning to destroy the world. And thus ends Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson.
One last endnote. Nas discusses the Ketek found on Navani Kolin's personal journal, which describes a personal account of the arrival of the Everstorm.
Yep.
So, how was that journey for you, Slava? Journey before destination.
It was a storming journey is what it was.
I'll take that joke and I'll just put
That joke is accepted?
That joke is accepted, yeah.
Excellent.
Yep.
I loved it. It was a good book. I can't say I liked it better than The Way of Kings. Maybe I did, and maybe I've said that here and there, kind of like people on the fly respond to a question. But as I thought about it more in preparation for this episode and our final one with the guys, I'm like processing, okay, so what do I want to highlight? What do I want to say, if anything? And yeah, hell yeah, I love this book, but the story itself is what keeps me entrenched in this chasm. I'm going to keep saying dumb puns.
Great.
It keeps me going, man.
You're a regular chull of a boy.
I got your cello right here.
Yeah, I bet you do. You're chow to chull.
Her name is Roxy.
Oh, well, that's fair too. I'm glad that you're starting to see what all the hype is about and that it's not just hype, because I think we've all read books that someone was like, oh my God, you got to read this book, right? And then you go, well, I mean, it was okay. People say this about movies all the time, right? Like, oh, you got to see this movie. And then you watch it and you go, I mean, it was fine. But like that person just loves those type of movies, right? This, on the other hand, I think has a payoff well worth its weight in gold.
I'd agree.
I think it does itself justice.
I'll buy that for a sphere.
What kind of sphere?
A sphere that's worth $1 in 1980s Detroit.
Fine.
From where the reference is.
Yeah, but like an emerald brome, sapphire brome, whatever. Get out of here. You and Ziggy Stardust, hit to the stars. Major Tom to ground control.
But that's such a good song, though.
Well, what are your final thoughts here, Slava, as we wind down? As these winds stop blustering and the storm has passed.
Yeah, man. I kind of felt the emotions of the Sanderlanche, right? The storm, the fighting, the escape, the murder of Sadeas, the return of Yasna, and then you're kind of left in this peace after the storm, especially in Oathbringer. I'll just use it as a jumping off point for the final thoughts. When Shallan and Adolin are talking, and Kaladin does go and does meet up with his family. We'll discuss it when that book is dropping on our schedule. But the next series of events seem to me as just this little sigh that the audience can take and the readers can take before it probably ratchets back up.
It does. It ratchets back up again. Yeah.
So, yeah, I like it. I like it here.
Oh man. Yeah, I don't have anything fresh to say besides just what a whirlwind these endings are that he creates.
Yeah.
They're movie level endings, which is why people love them.
Yeah, like epic type of movie.
Yeah. You remember the end of The Way of Kings, like in 2003 or when it came out?
Yeah.
And it has all these like very clear denoted endings because it fades like 7 times. It felt like that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep, for sure.
Well, wonderful. Thanks for joining us today as we wrapped up Words of Radiance. On the next episode, we will have the boys will be back in town, or they'll be back on Roshar. We have Spencer Spencerdom, who is one of our resident Cosmere experts. And then we have some returning guests that you all know and love, JT and Casey, who have read Words of Radiance for the first time themselves. So can't wait to hear what they have to say and what they bring to the table in the next episode of SideQuest. I have a favor to ask you. If you like what we're doing, the simplest way to support the show is to hit subscribe. In return, we'll keep leveling up, we'll listen to your feedback, and read authors that you suggest. Of course, we'll take side quests all along the way. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.